Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Today we got a lot of movement with the New York Giants on the waiver wire. They were the most active team in trying to claim players. We'll talk about those three guys. We're going to talk about the projected offensive line, some guys they signed to the practice squad, and a bunch of other moves. And of course, if you sign guys, you also have to get rid of guys. So some players are going to be hitting the injured list for the start of the season. Could be Evan Ingram, could be Allerson Smith. We're going to talk about a couple of players who will likely end up on that list. But altogether, there's a lot of movement today. So we're going to try and get through everything for you guys. Make sure you're caught up entirely on the Giants' moves. They're pretty important stuff too. So Anthony, before we dive into all of it, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing real good. I really like how active the Giants are being, here at the end of the preseason with cut day, with the waiver wire, everything like that, making these trades, claiming these players. They're being very active and proactive, at least in trying to, upgrade this roster in time for the regular season. So I really like the initiative that they're taking there. In years past, we've seen the Giants just kind of allow things to happen in front of them and not really go out and make trades, go out and claim players, sign free agents. But this year is different. They're really working hard to make sure that they have their roster in tip-top shape for the regular season. So, of course, our expectations are going to be a little higher this year, and as they should be. The Giants spent a lot of money in free agency, had a really good draft, and I'm really looking forward to this season. And I will also say, it just broke on my Twitter timeline, David Sills, he is back on the practice squad. Let's go. Very excited by that.
Let's
Rooted really
go.
hard for that kid all offseason long, all summer long. So very happy that he is back on the practice squad and will be able to continue to practice with Daniel Jones and develop that chemistry that they've strengthened this offseason.
Absolutely. The Giants signed a couple guys to the practice squad, including Brett Hedgie, Nico Lelos, Matt Cole, and Damian Wills, plus, of course, David Sills. And then you also have tight end Ryan Izzo, formerly of the New England Patriots and Houston Texans last year. Izzo is an interesting player. He spent time with Joe Judge in New England for the first 2 years of his career. He's primarily a blocker before a receiver, so that's something the Giants are trying to supplement with Levine Toilolo tearing his Achilles this season. He will likely end up being that tight end 4. But of course, there's a lot of movement today, including on the injured list. The Giants are going to have to move a couple players off this 53-man roster, and I hate to say it, but I'm really nervous that Evan Ingram might be on that list. And now a lot of people are coming out and saying, I hope he's on that list. He's a detriment to this team. I'd rather go with Kyle Rudolph and Caden Smith. But let me tell you why we don't want to lose Evan Ingram. And it's pretty clear cut. He is, when he's playing well, when he's not dropping footballs, and the Giants are going to try and avoid that middle portion of the field. They're going to try and get him into downfield vertical threats. And when you have a player as athletic as him, you command attention from defenses, which opens up your running game. It opens up your wide receiver 1s and wide receiver 2s from the slot, Kadarius Toney, Sterling Shepard, your pre-snap movement. No one's going to be paying attention to Caden Smith as a receiver, okay? But Evan Ingram, he demands attention from the free safeties. He demands attention from the linebackers, which opens up other playmakers. And it's not just about Evan Ingram. It's about Daniel Jones. It's about other playmakers. And while I do love Caden Smith, and I hope he gets his opportunity because he looked great in that last preseason game, Evan Ingram does a lot more for this team that meets the eye. And don't just, hedge your bet on the drops, because that's not exactly what I'm talking about. It's about his ability to create other openings and man coverage situations for his teammates. And then, of course, as Saquon Barkley as a receiver, think about this. If you have linebackers who are so worried about Evan Ingram running routes, and then you have Saquon Barkley running a route, now you have linebackers trying to figure out who they're going to be taking, who's in that man coverage assignment, creating a lot of confusion, and that's where Saquon's going to feast, and Evan Ingram creates that. So that's something to keep in mind of. Anthony, what are you thinking about Evan Ingram potentially landing on the injured list? Hopefully it's nothing too serious and he is able to stick with this team.
Yeah, I think it would be a blow to this offense. I think losing him is a detriment. I don't think having him is a detriment, because even if you're not a big fan of him, the way that he plays, anything like that, trust me, other NFL teams are, and other NFL team defenses key in on Evan Ingram when he's out there, because they understand that Daniel Jones loves to throw the ball to Evan Ingram. He just has a really good chemistry with him, or maybe he doesn't have the best chemistry considering all the turnovers and drops, but he is one of his favorite targets. He likes to share the football with him. And also for what Alex just mentioned, keep in mind Saquon Barkley, right? So imagine this, you're going up against a defense and their plan is to put a safety on Saquon Barkley all game long, but then they have the linebacker on Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram cooks that linebacker for a 20-yard out route 2 plays in a row, and then they're like, oh crap, now we have to put this safety on Evan Ingram. We have to get someone faster because our linebacker doesn't have enough speed to keep up with Evan Ingram, who runs a 4.4 40, right? So then they're going to take the linebacker, put it on Saquon, and then put the safety on Evan Ingram. Now you got Saquon coming out of the backfield on an angle or a choice route, and he's going to toast that linebacker. You're just trying to create mismatches across the board as an NFL offense. And Evan Ingram, believe it or not, is one of the best mismatch pieces in the league because of the speed that he has at the tight end position. Even if he's not the most reliable guy, even if he does drop quite a few passes every single year, the speed that he brings to the table and the route running ability that he brings to the table from that position is super valuable, because there are moments where you see NFL teams legitimately need to put cornerbacks on Evan Ingram because he is running such good routes out there. Now, here's one play that comes to mind, right? The drop in week 7 against Philadelphia that cost us that game, right? On that play, he was actually guarded by a cornerback, had a sick release off the line of scrimmage and beat him down the left sideline. Problem is he dropped the ball, but still, it goes to show the mismatches that he can create, where you take a corner and you put it on him, or you have to put a linebacker on him, then that opens things up for somebody else. It's all about creating mismatches and getting creative. No, I don't necessarily trust Jason Garrett to get very creative and create such great mismatches, but maybe I trust Freddie Kitchens to do that a little bit better, and he will be doing that a little bit more now that he's been elevated to senior offensive assistant. So Evan Ingram, I think it's very important that he is out there for the Giants this year. I hope that he's not on injured reserve, because I think that he does provide a lot of value to this offense, whether he's making plays or helping create plays for his teammates.
Absolutely. I think that there is value that Evan Ingram brings. And keep in mind that the last 2 years, he's been their most lethal weapon. Despite the drops, you can't really justify otherwise. He's been their focal point on offense. And I don't think he really has the cojones to be the focal point on offense, for lack of a better term. He just can't handle the pressure. And that's really what it comes down to. He hangs his head after a drop. He doesn't bounce back. And what I really think is, when he has other weapons around him, a healthy Saquon Barkley, a healthy Kenny Galladay, Kadarius Toney, even Kyle Rudolph, masking those deficiencies, he's gonna be a lot better. He's gonna feel like all the pressure is not on him, and I think that will elevate his game to a degree. So hopefully we will see that. But let's talk about the 3 players the Giants claimed today, because they actually made some good moves here. I think you guys are going to be happy with what they did. They went out and they got outside linebacker Quincy Roche out of Florida. They went out and got Colin Johnson out of Texas. He's a 5th-round pick from last year. And they got Justin Hilliard, Ohio State linebacker, as an undrafted free agent this year. Now, all 3 of these guys have application on this team. They all can be utilized in different facets. And I think you're going to be pretty happy with what they did here, because at the end of the day, they needed a couple players, and they are probably going to be putting guys like Ellerson Smith. That's one who's probably going to end up on the injured list to start the year. He missed all of camp with an injury. Josh Jackson, a cornerback, missed the first practice. He got injured with the Giants after being traded for. He's probably going to end up on the injured list. Maybe Evan Ingram, we're going to find out. But Quincy Roche is an interesting one, because he'll probably take Ellerson Smith's spot. This preseason with the Pittsburgh Steelers as a rookie, 6th-round pick, he finished with 6 total tackles and 2 sacks. He's a 6'3" and 245-pound defender. He has a few physical limitations. He doesn't have the best bend. This is what Lance Zierlein of NFL.com said about him. Roche has packed the stat sheets for the better part of 4 years, but he's very average athletically and doesn't have the mass to consistently hold up at the point of attack. He's tight in his lower half, which limits his ability to corner sharply when attacking the pocket. However, he's limber in his upper body, which creates opportunities to slide off of blocks and make plays at awkward angles. His production should matter, but the athletic profile might push him down the board. So, when you're looking at him, again, like I said, he has some physical limitations, but he's a developmental player. He had 2 sacks and 6 tackles during preseason play with Pittsburgh, so he showed some flashiness. And I think that he's a good guy to have on the back end of your roster as a rookie, just to develop. The Giants have a great coaching staff with great players to help him get acclimated to this NFL and to the team and scheme. But he is an outside linebacker, so he fits our 3-4 scheme very nicely, Anthony. I know you know a little bit about Quincy Roche. I know you think he is a solid prospect. A lot of people had him going in the first 3 rounds. He dropped to the 6th round. Think about Izzo Ojulari. People were talking about him at 11, ended up at 50. Some guys just fall. Trey Smith, he's about to start on the Chiefs. People thought he'd be a top 3-round pick. Now he was a 6th-round pick. So some guys fall for whatever reason, but Quincy Roche has some talent left to unfold here.
Yeah, I do really like Quincy Roche. I remember we did a video about him during the pre-draft process. You and I, we discussed him on the podcast. And I think that the scouting report that you just detailed is pretty similar to our evaluations of him back when we did discuss him. Kind of athletically limited, but pretty technical, pretty good pass rusher, good hands, that kind of stuff, technical player. And yes, a 3-4 scheme fit. I definitely think he fits in to that same role that Lorenzo Carter plays, where you're primarily a pass rusher, but every now and then you do have to drop back and play a little coverage. I just watched a play on Twitter where he did have an interception against Trevor Lawrence and Clemson. So he clearly has some coverage ability right there. Plus, he is a pretty active pass rusher who, like you mentioned, did stuff the stat sheet. And one common denominator on all three of these guys that the Giants claimed, Alex, I'll share with you, is that they are all Senior Bowl standouts. Justin Hilliard, Quincy Roche, and Colin Johnson all stood out when they were at the Senior Bowl in their respective years. And I think that's something to keep in mind, that the Giants, historically, Dave Gettleman especially, they love Senior Bowl players. So I have to take into some consideration that they are all from the Senior Bowl, and that I'm assuming that the Giants looked back at their scouting reports from the Senior Bowl, probably had these guys with little stars next to their name. Like, these are guys that stood out at the Senior Bowl. Let me get these guys somewhere down the line if they become available. And then when they all became available, they said, all right, let's look back at our scouting reports, reviewed them, liked what they saw, liked what they've done in the NFL so far in their limited quantity of playing time, and then went ahead and made these moves. And I really like all three of these moves. They're all young players with high upside. They did stand out at the Senior Bowl. Senior Bowl players do usually turn out into some sort of decent player, whether that be a long-term starter or whether that be at least a viable backup for their career. Senior Bowl success rate is pretty high in the NFL. Of course, remember Kadarius Toney was a Senior Bowl standout. Aaron Robinson was a Senior Bowl standout. The Giants love to go after guys, and I mean, of course, Daniel Jones was a Senior Bowl standout. The Giants love to go after guys who balled out at the Senior Bowl. So that's my common denominator on all three of those guys. But with Quincy Roche, I do love that he's coming from the Miami defensive system. I think that that's a system that can translate really well over to the New York Giants defensive scheme, and I'm very excited by this waiver claim in particular.
Yeah, me too. I think that he has some untapped potential there. And, it's always good to explore some players, especially that fit your scheme really nicely. The Giants, of course, have Lorenzo Carter, Ocean Exhibitors. They kept Trent Harris on the roster. They expected more from Ellerson Smith, but the injury did hold him back. Really unfortunate there. Hopefully he will be healthy at some point in the year and can contribute in some way. It could just be one of those years that he misses the entire season and they find Quincy Roche and he has a great year. And suddenly Ellerson Smith is wondering, do I have a spot on this roster next offseason? So, another man's trash is another man's treasure, and Quincy Roche is just picking up where Ellerson Smith left off, hopefully. But the next guy on the list is wide receiver Colin Johnson, who spent the 2020 season with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He actually last year was the tallest receiver in the NFL, right? 6'6", massive receiver. He really closely mirrors Kenny Galladay's frame and size, Anthony. Johnson, I actually like. I think he's a pretty solid move because if the Giants, for whatever reason, have to sit Kenny Galladay, I think he's actually a good option, Anthony. What do you think about Colin Johnson?
I actually really like Colin Johnson. He does have good bit of NFL experience, played quite a bit last year with the Jaguars, and played with Mike Glennon, which I think is a very interesting and kind of important connection. They could have asked Mike Glennon for some input on Colin Johnson. That's very possible. Or they could have in mind, if, God forbid, anything were to happen to Daniel Jones and he goes down for an injury, okay, Jones has all of this chemistry with the wide receivers that are starting on the roster right now, but who exactly does Mike Glennon have great chemistry with that he can gel with in practice? Well, Colin Johnson became available, and we know that they have a pretty decent chemistry, so why not bring him onto the team, at least to practice with Mike Glennon, and give him a reliable connection that he can understand and play with. And then that also works into the cornerbacks as well, because they're trying to go up against a quarterback and wide receiver duo that does have a good connection. So if Glennon's not connecting well with the current receivers, let's bring in someone that he can connect with. Plus, Colin Johnson's a solid player, 6'6", big body outside wide receiver that I like a lot, that looked really good at the Senior Bowl. That was a really good player that had 15 touchdowns in one season in college. Good player, young player with high upside. So I do really like this move, and I do agree with the analysis that I'm sure you're going to give Alex, where his playing style mirrors Kenny Galladay's, and that is really important for the Giants just in case anything does happen to Kenny Galladay.
Right, and I think that's the major point, right? The Giants need somebody who, if Kenny Galladay has to miss any time, and he's already dealing with a hamstring injury, he's not guaranteed for week 1. I do think he'll play. But Colin Johnson, who will learn this scheme over the next couple of weeks, they now have a player who they can say, okay, you know what, Kenny Galladay's out. We want to keep our scheme the same. We don't want to have to axe a whole portion of our playbook because Kenny Galladay is now out, which has happened in the past when Saquon Barkley, got injured. They had to axe a whole portion of the playbook. Suddenly you're running with half the playbook and teams are really figuring it out rather quickly. You're seeing a lot of really short yardage routes because You don't have a running back that creates any attention like guys like Kareem Hunt do, or Ezekiel Elliott or Alvin Kamara. So now when you have a guy like Colin Johnson, let's say Kenny Galladay misses time, knock on wood. Colin Johnson go in there, 6'6", huge catch radius. He's known for high pointing footballs, 50-50, and he's a great red zone radius as well. So those are the same exact traits that Kenny Galladay has. The problem is Colin Johnson is just a pretty raw route runner. He's stiff on his break. He doesn't have that extra burst, but neither does Kenny Galladay, by the way. Kenny Galladay is not known for his route running abilities. He is known for his physicality, his big body frame, his 50-50 jump ball abilities, and his huge catch radius. That is what he's known for, and his spatial awareness. He has very good spatial awareness. But he's not known for creating a ton of separation. But his arms are like 6 feet long, so when you throw a ball to him, maybe the cornerback is 1 yard behind him, which is not a lot of separation, but his arms are so long, he actually creates 3 yards of separation, 4 yards of separation just with his length alone. So that's where it kind of, you get lost in translation there. So I think Colin Johnson has similar traits. Is he even close to as good as Kenny Galladay? No way. I'm not saying he's as good as Kenny Galladay. I'm just saying they have similar traits, so the Giants don't have to upend their scheme if Kenny is forced to miss any time. So that's kind of my take on Colin Johnson. And I think, when he came out of college, this is what they had to say about him. A big physical wide receiver that displays good overall athleticism for the position. He uses excellent length and excellent catch radius in contested catch situations. He shows sufficient play speed on 8 and 9 routes, which is really good because the Giants want to have a more downfield approach this year, while also displaying good tracking ability to locate the football in the air, which is exactly what Kenny Galladay does. We will use his big body to catch a 6 route and absorb contact, display good willingness and courage to give up his body to secure off-target throws, very good competitiveness to make difficult catches at critical moments in the game. He will be a red zone nightmare for defenders due to his big body and ability to get the football anywhere on the field. So this is exactly the type of backup you want for Kenny Galladay, right? You can't ask for a better description of what you want to supplement Galladay's loss if need be. Now, the third guy they picked up today, who I actually really like, Justin Hilliard, former Ohio State linebacker. Another player, the Giants kind of looking to supplement some linebacker depth. I know they have Reggie Ragland. Now they have Carter Coughlin and Blake Martinez. But what makes Hilliard so intriguing is he's a more coverage-based linebacker. The Giants don't really have that. I know they have Tay Crowder, but he's still working his way up into the NFL. I don't coin him as a coverage linebacker. Hilliard this preseason had 110 total snaps. He picked up 15 tackles and 8 stops. He was flying all around the field, very versatile. I'm not saying he's going to start. I'm not even saying he's going to make the team. What I'm saying is he's a good developmental project on the back end of this roster, like a TJ Brunson, who just tore his Achilles or ACL, one of those two. He tore his something this offseason, and now, maybe they want to supplement that project at the back end of the roster with a guy like Justin Hilliard, who comes from a very strong Ohio State team and also has the abilities to be a coverage linebacker and a run stopper. I like this pickup, Anthony. What are you thinking of it?
I like it a lot. One thing about Justin Hilliard, though, he is a very injury-prone player. He's had a lot of injuries in the past. I don't think he's had any in the NFL, but through college and through high school, he did suffer quite a few injuries. Torn meniscus, torn left bicep, torn right bicep, both biceps, and an Achilles injury. Overcame all of this at Ohio State. Pretty awesome story that he made it to the NFL and didn't give up after dealing with injury after injury after injury. But also one thing that I want to point out here is he did have a staggering amount, 726 special team snaps in his Ohio State career. So that is pretty special. He's also an older player, granted 6th-year eligibility because of all those injuries when he was at Ohio State. He does have a great mix of length and athleticism. But again, I really like what he contributes on special teams, and I really like how that athleticism translates to his coverage ability. As you mentioned, Alex, I think he is a pretty good coverage linebacker, pretty versatile weapon on defense, can play some man coverage, some zone coverage, can fly around as a run defender. I really like what he brings to the table, just a young player who's dealt with a lot, hasn't reached his potential just yet. Maybe the Giants can get the most out of him, and maybe he can have a pretty good season or a pretty good career long-term with New York, whether that be as a backup or one day as a starter. So, yeah, I really like Justin Hilliard. I think that he was a great prospect coming out of college, and I think, the story is awesome considering what he had to go through. And then I also think, you look at his skill set, and it was a need for the Giants to provide or to add a little bit more coverage from that linebacker position, that inside linebacker position. That is something that they needed. So I do think that this was an important pickup for the Giants, and I am a big fan of it.
Yep, I would agree. And I think these three claims, the Giants were the most active team, as I said before, on the waiver wire, and they claimed three players. None of them were offensive linemen, though. The two guards that teams released were picked up immediately, right? So the Giants didn't really have a chance at getting an offensive lineman. Joe Judge did say the two offensive linemen they traded for today, and let's head over to this OL to project what the starting unit is going to look like, because we kind of have an idea, but there are two positions, left guard and right tackle, that are still up in the air. So we'll take a look and see who might be starting come week one. But Judge just said 2 minutes ago the two offensive linemen they traded for, Billy Price and Ben Bredesen, are in the process of getting to New York. They're not there today, but they will be eventually. And that kind of raises an interesting question, at left guard. He did say that Shane Lemieux would be practicing today, so I don't think he's going to end up on injured reserve to start the season. He has a partially torn patellar tendon, okay? That's the same injury, not partially torn, fully torn, Victor Cruz had, which basically ruined his career, right? Victor Cruz fully tore his patellar tendon. It ruined his career, and now he's a talk show host, and a damn good one at that. So when you're looking at an injury like that, a partially torn patellar tendon, that is a serious issue. That is not something you take lightly. Shane Lemieux was a bad son of a gun for it being able to play and practice through that. That's pretty badass. He has not played this preseason. He has not performed in joint practices. He's really just been rehabilitating, preparing for the regular season. He was practicing today, probably a little bit lighter, more of a walkthrough, I would imagine, after the preseason game on Sunday. But for the most part, Shane Lemieux, he's trying, man. He's fighting his way to try and play this year. I don't know how well that left knee is going to hold up, but what I will say is Ben Bredesen is no joke. He's a pretty good player. The Baltimore Ravens simply just didn't have enough roster spots for him. They were the team that actually signed Kevin Zeitler. Ben Bredesen played the majority of his snaps at right guard this preseason. He looked phenomenal. He was one of the highest graded offensive linemen during the preseason play. And the Giants went out and snagged him for a fourth rounder. They also returned a fifth rounder and seventh round pick in 2023 for that fourth rounder they sent for next year. So big addition there. Anthony, do you think that he has a potential really to steal that starting job away from Shane Lemieux within the next week and a half? We know not a lot of time to get acclimated, but is it possible that he might be able to steal that spot? I know he was playing right guard, but he's traditionally a left guard, so he will likely fill that role, and Will Hernandez will stay on the right side. But at this point, if Shane Lemieux is not looking himself, I'm not against the idea of just starting Bredesen right off the bat.
I think he should start, personally. I'm all in on this Ben Breederson guy starting for the Giants in week one. I don't want to see... Okay, here's how I'm going to put it. Shane Lemieux last season was horrible, at least in my eyes, and a lot of people have the same opinion. He was a absolute liability in pass protection. He was struggling every single game and allowing the quarterback to get smacked every other play. It was an issue. And a lot of that had to do with his lower body, his feet, and his inability to stay in front of people. So now with a partially torn knee, he's supposed to be better than last year. How? How could that possibly be the case? I don't see that being the case. So Ben Breederson, fully healthy, I'll take him, bro. He had a really great preseason. Actually, he was the 11th ranked guard by Pro Football Focus this preseason, and he played the most amount of snaps of any guard in the preseason. That means that the small sample size was actually much larger for Ben Breederson than it was for any other guard in the NFL in the preseason. So this dude got a lot of work this preseason, held his own, and at times dominated and looked like a really good, solid player. At no point in the large sample size of Shane Lemieux in the regular season did he ever look like that, So take somewhere in the middle of that, somewhere in the middle of being a really good player in the preseason, somewhere in the middle of being a really bad player last regular season. Ben Breederson in the regular season is going to be somewhere there, and I think that he already is an upgrade over Shane Lemieux. You guys know this. I've never been a big Shane Lemieux guy. I've never wanted to see him start. I've always wanted the Giants to find someone else to compete with Shane Lemieux and hopefully take the starting position. I even thought Zach Fulton might be the guy to take that starting position before they cut him, because that's how low I am on Shane Lemieux. So if you're telling me it's Shane Lemieux with a partially torn knee or Ben fully healthy Breederson, I think you guys know who I want to see starting out there. I don't want to see Shane Lemieux, and especially just keeping in mind that no, I don't have anything against Shane Lemieux. I want him to be healthy, and I want him to have a good career long term, maybe even just as a backup. So no, I don't want him to go out there with a partially torn patellar and then tear it fully. Dude, that would be devastating for his career if he plays through this and injures it further. And I don't want to see that happen because, by all accounts, Shane Lemieux is a good guy and a really hard worker who comes to the building at 6 a.m. and leaves at 9 p.m. That's the type of player that he is. I don't want to see a guy like that have his career ruined because he's a backup level player starting on a torn knee. Like, let's just preserve his health and let's let Ben Breederson play in week 1. That's how I feel about this. I want to see him be the starting left guard in week 1. I don't know if that's the route that the Giants are going to go. If Shane Lemieux says he can play, I think they're going to let him play. Personally, I don't think they should due to his health concerns because of how severe this injury could get if it gets any worse. And then also because I actually just think that Ben Breederson might be the better player.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Shane Lemieux right now, and essentially he said 2 weeks ago that he's not going to miss time. He's like, I will not miss time with this injury. He's a tough guy. I get his willingness to try and fight through this, but at the end of the day, this is how I see the Giants approaching this. I think that they start Shane Lemieux week 1, but it's a short week because they have the Washington football team that very, very shortly after, only a couple days. In that scenario, I think they give Ben Breederson, whatever, that second game. I think I cannot say half these guys' names. There's so many guys. Breederson, I don't know. Whole wheat Breederson, I don't know. That's my dad joke of the day.
There we go, the Alex dad joke. But I do really like what you're saying, the point that you're making about the short week. I actually didn't even have that in mind, didn't think of that. But that might be a good reason for the Giants to maybe even take a rotation on more than one spot on the offensive line. We could even bring up that discussion from Matt Parrott and Nate Solder.
That's a very valid point. I think pretty much the projected offensive line right now this is how I see it. Left guard, of course, you're going with Andrew Thomas, unless Jesus comes down and he's 6'5", 340 pounds, and absolutely brolic. Probably not happening.
You said left guard. I think you mean left tackle, but
left
also
tackle.
Left tackle. That is a very unlikely scenario. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, highly doubtful. But we could use some luck with Andrew Thomas, couldn't we? He's struggled this offseason quite a bit. That last preseason game was a big worry for me. But I will say this, and I understand after watching Andrew Thomas what he was trying to do. Last year, Andrew Thomas's biggest weakness was getting beat inside, which is a cardinal sin for offensive linemen. If anything, you want to get beat outside. You never want to get beat inside. He was trying to protect that inside. And by doing that, he allowed his hips to open up. He did not, his jams, his ability to get inside the defender's chest plate were failed attempts because I think it was Josh Uche literally was just swiping his hands down. It was just really well timed. He needs to have better timing with his hand placement. He cannot let his frame open up like a swinging door like it did against the Patriots. He needs to get better with that. But I understand where he was coming from, not trying to give up the inside. Now, if he can take that step forward, of course, that would be ideal. Andrew Thomas, though, he's my starting left tackle. I imagine everyone is in agreement with that. Left guard, I have Shane Lemieux starting week 1.
Because really quickly, I do want to mention something about Andrew Thomas. I'm sure many of you who are active on Giants Twitter did read about Ben Baldinger or watch his video, his breakdown on Andrew Thomas's performance. And I want to say, yes, he should be the starting left tackle week 1. But if you watch what Baldy was saying about Andrew Thomas, I tweeted this underneath the tweet. It sounds like he should be a right tackle. The problem that he's having, according to Baldy, is his jam, his initial stab after his kick step. He's saying his kick steps are good. He's getting into position initially, but then his jab with his left hand is off like every single time, and then it causes the following footsteps after that to be all out of place and then just kind of ruin the rep, right? So what I'm getting from that is his left hand sucks. His right hand is doing just fine, but his lead hand, his non-dominant hand, is not doing so good. So one thing that I want to see if the Giants can consider long-term, maybe he should be playing right tackle, and that's almost what it sounds like once I heard Baldy say this. So yes, he should be the starting left tackle week 1. That's where he's practiced all 2 years long now, but just going forward, I want people to keep that in mind, and I might even have to do a separate video just breaking that down for people because his left hand is clearly the problem on these reps in the preseason, and if that continues, then he's not going to play well ever at left tackle. He's going to have to fix that or move over to right tackle.
Yeah, which could open the door for them to say, okay, he's struggling. Let's move him over to the right side. We'll move Solder back to left tackle. That could be a future thing, but for now, they want him to be that bookend left tackle, and that's where he will play. But left guard, as I said before, how I see this happening, Shane Lemieux, week 1, see how he fares, and then Ben Bredesen in week 2 against Washington because it's a short week. I don't think Shane Lemieux can handle that much pressure on his knee. So I think that's how they're going to probably go about this to start the year. And then after week 2, they'll have a week and a half to rest and really see what's going on with Lemieux's knee. Then they can make the decision whether or not Bredesen played better, Lemieux played better, and they can really figure it out down the road. But to start the year, I think Lemieux will get the first shot. Center, of course, you have Nick Gates. I don't think anyone's derailing his position. Even Billy Price, who is an average center at best. He's a below average guard. So I think Nick Gates has that center position pretty locked up. The versatility he does bring to that team, though, both Price and Gates, but especially Gates, if they do have injuries, they can kick Gates out to right tackle. They can kick him out to guard. They kick him out anywhere. He can really do it all. Having a guy like that on such a cheap contract is such a bonus. Right guard, of course, you have Will Hernandez. He is the, clear-cut right guard. He's looked really good this preseason. I don't want to mess with that. He's been working with Duke Manyweather all offseason. He faced COVID and injuries in 2020. He's bounced back really strong. I'm really excited about that. And then the right tackle spot, I think the Giants are going to go. This is tough, man. In my head, I keep wanting to say Matt Pert, but I think they're going to go with Matt Pert to open the year. I think they're going to go with Matt Pert to open the year. I had to think about it for a second because it is a tough decision to make because Nate Solder has had moments of good, but Matt Pert has had moments of bad. They've both kind of been up and down, but I think Matt Pert, they want him to be the long-term solution. I think he'll get the start there, but if he struggles, I think he'll be on a short leash. That's how I view this offensive line going into week 1.
Yeah, I have to say, I think I agree there. Like I said, I want Ben Breederson to start at left guard. Center, completely agree. Nick Gates or die. Right guard, Will Hernandez has looked so good this offseason. He's got to stay there. I don't even want to ever entertain him going back to left side at this point because he's looked so good this offseason at right guard. But of course, we'll see how it translates to the regular season. Right tackle, I'm still a Matt Peart believer. It's been a little rough. He's had a lot of shaky moments. I think a lot of that has to do with the lingering back injury that he's still recovering from. But I agree. Maybe he should be on a short leash. Maybe we should discuss Nate Solder if he continues to struggle. And I like what you mentioned about that short week 2 being on the Thursday night following that Sunday. Maybe, just maybe, you see Matt Peart start week 1 and you see Nate Solder start week 2 just to keep him healthy going forward long term, considering he did deal with that back injury earlier this offseason. But that is the starting 5 in my eyes. I think you said Shane Lemieux at left guard. I'm going to say Ben Breederson. But other than that, we're on the same page. I think the Giants are on the same page as well. And going forward, we'll see how this unit progresses and how they do this year, because hopefully it doesn't get as scary as it possibly could be.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat as you. And just a couple last things here. Evan Ingram, update on him. Joe Judge basically was like, we're going to let him rest this week and weekend, meaning they're probably not going to put him on the injured list, right? Otherwise, they'd probably have to do that today or tomorrow if they wanted to get these guys on the roster. So Evan Ingram, they're going to let him rest. They're going to see how the calf is feeling. If it was serious, we would know. You know what I mean? If it was a torn calf, if it was a grade 3 calf, we would know that he would be out for a while already. But the fact of the matter is they still think he's obviously capable of playing in week 1. I think they're going to let him rest, see how it feels. It's probably a grade 1, maybe a grade 2. I'd probably lean on grade 1 if they haven't already announced that he's really hurt. They have probably already got doctors stuff. It's probably on the edge, between grade 1 and grade 2. It's a grade 1.5, and they want to just give him that week to see if he heals fast, if the rehabilitation helps him. But as of now, we don't really know what's going on with Evan Ingram. As I said at the beginning of this video, I don't think losing him is a good thing like some people do. In fact, you do really want to risk, what if Caden Smith or Kyle Rudolph gets hurt? What if Kyle Rudolph hurts his foot again? And then you have Caden Smith and Ryan Izzo. You're in kind of a bit of trouble there. So hopefully Evan Ingram is okay. If he has to miss week 1, hopefully they have Saquon and Kenny Golladay playing. They did say that Saquon Barkley is going to be ramping up today, which is a really nice positive to hear. He's slowly getting a bit more under his belt ahead of this week 1 game against the Denver Broncos. Anthony, any thoughts on how much Saquon might play in week 1 or Evan Ingram situation?
I know a lot of people don't think that Saquon's going to take the majority of snaps at running back, but I'm kind of in the minority. I think he takes the majority. I think he takes at least 60% of the snaps at running back. This is going to be a tough game because that defense is so good, and we're going to need our best players out there. Now, you could potentially say, again, with the short week in mind in week 2, maybe they take it easy with Saquon and then unleash him in week 2 because then he has the long week to recover for week 3. that might be the correct strategy to take. But I don't know, man. I think that he's healthy enough. I think that he's progressing really well, and I think that he's ready. They're just being really cautious and don't want him to get hit just yet. They want to wait till the regular season, but we'll definitely see him out there in week 1. There's no way that he doesn't play. I just, who knows how much. I think that he plays close to 60%. I've heard a lot of people say 40%, 30%, even 20%. Some people really don't think he's going to play much at all in week 1, but I think he plays the majority of the game. I just think the Giants are being a little coy and a little tight-lipped on this situation, so the Denver Broncos don't have as much time to prepare.
That's probably exactly what they're doing. The Giants don't want to give any information away, especially a week and a half before the game. If they know Evan Ingram's not playing, they can plan accordingly. But if they can wait as long as possible to let any information out, it's even with Saquon. I bet Saquon's playing. I bet Kenny Galladay's playing. I bet Kadarius Toney is playing. But they don't want to tell Denver anything, right? They don't want to say, oh, we know this guy's playing because now we can estimate there's going to be more pre-snap motion. We don't want to know. They don't want them to know Saquon's going to be playing because then they're going to know they have one of the best running backs in the league, healthy and ready to go. They don't want to know Kenny Galladay's playing, because then you have a huge possession receiver who can dominate in the red zone. We haven't seen this offense yet with all the weapons on the field. Keep in mind, last week against the Patriots, we saw Devontae Booker. We saw CJ Board. We had Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton on the field. But when you have Saquon, Kenny, Kadarius, Kyle Rudolph, Evan, when you have all these guys, the defense is going to look different. The scheme is going to look different. We saw a lot of 3-yard curls, a lot of 5-yard stick routes. It's not going to be like that, guys. I mean, if it is, God help me, but I can't imagine we're going to see the same exact offense. And we said going into the game, if you heard us, this is going to be a vanilla scheme. People freaking out about it, posting videos, trying to, rile everybody up. They don't want to give away their whole scheme in a preseason game, guys. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I feel about it. They want to hide everything they can possibly hide against Denver, and hopefully they'll come out guns blazing and they'll kick some butt. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Fireside Giants. As always, make sure to subscribe below on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. As always, make sure to subscribe on YouTube because we have so much great content. We have highlight videos, analysis, instant analysis. We're going to do film breakdowns with our guy Brian Walker on some of these defensive backs, professional grade analysis for you guys from the real deal. He trains Darnay Holmes, trains Xavier McKinney. I was actually on the phone with him 2 days ago. He told me Xavier McKinney has been looking insane in practice, like an absolute stud. He says he wouldn't be surprised if he had an all-pro career. That's how high he is on Xavier McKinney. He's also said some great things about James Bradbury, Logan Ryan, these guys. So professional grade analysis there. We'll have that to you as the season progresses and we have more film to work off of. Make sure to subscribe below for all that good stuff. And we'll catch you guys on the next New York Giants video.